But we do need to stay focused on some big challenges, like climate change.
Hey, listen, y'all, if you haven't noticed, California is bone dry. It looked like a trailer for the new Mad Max movie up in there. Y'all think that Bradley Cooper came here because he wants to talk to Chuck Todd? He needed a glass of water. Come on.
The science is clear. The science is clear. 9 out of the 10 hottest years ever came in the last decade.
Now, I'm not a scientist, but I do know how to count to 10.
Rising seas, more violent storms.
You got mosquitoes, sweaty people on the train stinking it up. It's just nasty.
I mean, look at what's happening right now. Every serious scientist says we need to act. The Pentagon says it's a national security risk. Miami floods on a sunny day, and instead of doing anything about it, we've got elected officials throwing snowballs in the Senate.
Okay. All right. Here's a rather alarming article over here at zerohedge.com. NASA scientist warns, California has 1 year of water left. Let me repeat that. California has 1 year of water left. There are simply too many people living in California that outstrip the supply of water. It really is that simple. You don't have to be a hydrologist or a meteorologist or a scientist to see what's happening. I recently fled California to greener pastures, if you will. Couldn't be happier. It's good to be back in town. Given the historic low temperature and snowfalls that pummeled the eastern U.S. this winter, it might be easy to overlook how devastating California's winter was as well. Devastating as in non-existent. As our wet season draws to a close, in California most of the rainfall comes between November and March. That's the wet season. If that wet season doesn't translate into snowpack, catastrophe is the result. It is clear that the paltry rain and snowfall have done almost nothing to alleviate the epic drought conditions. January was the driest in California since record keeping began in 1895. Groundwater and snowpack levels are at all-time lows. We're not just up a creek without a paddle in California, we're losing the creek too. Data from NASA satellites showed that the amount of water stored in Sacramento and San Joaquin river basins, that is all of the snow, river and reservoir water, water in the soils, and groundwater combined, was 34 million acre-feet below normal in 2014. That loss is nearly 1.5 times the capacity of Lake Mead, America's largest reservoir. An artificial reservoir, of course, that should have never been created to begin with. Look at the result. Look at the result. In fact, Zero Hedge recently did an article on that. I will put it in the description below. The fallacy of the Boulder Dam project. And there's also a great documentary out there on Netflix, actually, called Damnation. It's got more of an environmentalist overtone, but it makes some really solid points. Check it out. Statewide, we've been dropping more than 12 million acre-feet of total water yearly since 2011. Roughly 2/3 of these losses are attributed to groundwater pumping for agricultural irrigation in the Central Valley. Farmers have little choice but to pump more groundwater during droughts, especially when their surface water allocations have been slashed 80 to 100%. But these pumping rates are excessive and unsustainable. Wells are running dry. In some areas of the Central Valley, the land is sinking by 1 foot or more per year. In some areas, it's actually sunk as much as 6 feet, if you can believe that. As difficult as it may be to face, the simple fact is California is running out of water. And the problem started before our current drought. NASA data revealed that the total water shortage in California has been in steady decline since at least 2002. When satellite-based monitoring began, although the groundwater depletion has gone on since the early 20th century. Right now, the state has only about 1 year of water supply left in its reservoirs, and our strategic backup supply, groundwater, is rapidly disappearing. Did you hear that? Do I have to repeat it? California has no contingency plan for a persistent drought like this one, let alone a 20-plus year mega drought, except apparently staying in emergency mode and praying for rain. Or, another option, would be to put a halt to the geoengineering which is helping to exacerbate, if not completely causing, this drought, at the governmental level. Now, do you think that's going to happen? The answer is no. California is going to be destroyed one way or another. And a contrived drought is a nice corrosive way to achieve that goal. In short, we have no paddle to navigate this crisis. Several steps need to be taken right now. First, immediate mandatory water rationing should be authorized across all state water sectors, from domestic and municipal through agricultural and industrial. Second, the implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014 should be accelerated. Third, the state needs a task force of thought leaders that starts right now brainstorming the lay of groundwater for long-term water management strategies. Our state's water management is complex, but the technology and expertise exists to handle this harrowing future. It will require major changes in policy and infrastructure that could take decades to identify and act on. That's the problem. It's a race against time. You've got all these cities that are considering a desalination plant. Do you realize how many years it's going to take just to get the permit? Unless, of course, it's accelerated. You realize how long it will take to build those plants? There's no way. How is Palm Springs going to benefit from a desalination plant? They're in the middle of the desert. That infrastructure would take years to build. That's the problem. It's too late. Today, not tomorrow, is the time to begin. Finally, the public must take ownership of this issue. Absolutely. If you read all these articles, they're piecemealing it. They're softening it. They're massaging it. They are not telling Californians, probably to keep the real estate market propped up, exactly how bad this drought really is. And it's not just California, but the majority of people in the Southwest United States live in California. And of course, again, that's the problem. The crisis belongs to all of us, not just a handful of decision makers. Water is our most important commonly owned resource, but the public remains detached from discussions and decisions. The process works just fine when water is in abundance, right? Because nobody cares. The good old-fashioned normalcy bias. And then there's the other side of that coin when you tell someone that there's a horrible drought going on and they say, well, we're always in a drought. That's the problem. It's a compounding effect, moron. In times of crisis, however, we must demand that planning for California's water security be an honest, transparent, and forward-looking process. Most important, we must make sure that there is in fact a plan. And of course, the bond measure that was recently voted in is its own boondoggle down there in California. Is absolutely meaningless if there's no rain, if there's no snowpack. What the hell is the point of building new dam systems if there's no water in them? California's fucked. If you own property, sell it as soon as you can. Get out of California. You've been warned. You've been warned. I don't know how many predictions I've made that have been accurate. The writing is on the wall. So if you live in the Southwest United States, sell your property and move to the East Coast or move north. California is fucked. So there it is. Check it out.